Okay.
Dr. Serena, welcome to another edition of Pendulum. It's been almost going strong by almost 19th episode. So congratulations on that and looking forward to your new session now.
Thank you. Well, I couldn't have done it without you. So thank you for hosting me and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. Linda, thank you for being here. And for those of you that may be joining us on Facebook or watching later, Cheryl, hi, thank you for joining.
Hi, Serena.
Hi, I'm gonna share my screen. I'm excited about sharing this today. So hopefully I can do this. I'm not sure what's going on here. Oh, there we go. Okay. So hopefully, oh my goodness, what's happening here? Oh no, I think I have the wrong one. Hold on. Let me just, anyways, so today, so while I'm figuring out which one I'm supposed to be sharing with you, I want to just mention that it is actually World Kindness Day today. And so I thought that would be a great place to just kind of bring attention to and talk a little bit about, kindness and what that looks like, especially in today's world. And with everything that's going on, I think a lot of us, can use a little compassion and kindness to ourselves. And, how do we show that to other people? And especially, when there's like differences that we may feel and express and just have with people. And so I'm hoping that, let me see here, what's happening. I'm hoping that we can engage in a conversation and talk a little bit about this. I am not sure what's happening. This is not allowing me to share this. So let me just try this one more time. Okay. Oh, okay. I see that I'm the host now. All right, let's try this one more time. I think I got it. All right. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. So, what we're going to talk about is kindness. And, so when I was thinking about like how to kind of, what this is about and, it being World Kindness Day, today. So this is, a global thing. There are many organizations that started this. This started back, I'm not going to have the exact date, but the idea with this is, basically how do we just embrace kindness and show this more in our day-to-day life. And there was a lot of resources that I kind of consulted with to bring some information together. And I, listed the resources at the end of this for you too, so that hopefully, if you get a chance that you'll be able to take a look at it as well. But, here's a definition from the Webster's Dictionary. And it can mean very different things, depending on where you are in the world. And but the adjective version of it, so, kind can also be a noun in our language, in English language. And so, we're not talking about like a type or a category or sorts. We're using it more as a descriptor. And so it's looking at it from this perspective of being sympathetic or helpful, of being gentle. And so it really came up with like different kind of images and thoughts in my mind about, what are some ways that we can bring this to ourselves and bring this more to others that may be needing it to some degree. And so then I was looking at like different synonyms, like what are some other ways that people may use or other words that people might use to describe kindness, depending on what it might mean to them. And these were some of the words that the Webster's Dictionary also had as synonyms. And I was curious, if any of you that are on this call right now, if any of these words kind of stick out to you, in looking at this definition.
I think gracious is a good one, because the reason I think that is because if you can be gracious to somebody else, you're basically being, well, I don't know if this is exactly it, but somewhat empathetic, and you're understanding. And I think that in itself is a kindness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate you bringing that up, because in different religions, they use different words to describe the same thing. And so it's very intriguing to me. And I've heard this like with clients and with students and with colleagues, like grace might mean kindness, in one grace in one religion might mean kindness in another religion. And so it was interesting to me how like the different words can mean the same thing, and yet how we perceive it differently, right? And just kind of like exactly what you were saying, that there's like also this more layered definition
Yeah.
to it. So I appreciate that. Thank you. So yeah, so that was, kind of the idea behind this. And so there's lots of different benefits to kindness. And when I was thinking about, what are the benefits to kindness? If you look at, this list here, we have like the individual mental health benefits, and then we have collective mental health benefits. And when we do kind acts, to ourselves or to other people or for other people or with other people, and that's, also with ourselves and for ourselves and to ourselves, these are the kind of benefits that a lot of research backs this up, and people who have engaged in acts of kindness have also shared these kinds of experiences of feeling these kinds of effects. And so there's been like a general increase in mood for the person doing the act of kindness, increased emotional regulation, increased sense of connection with other people, just increased positivity, increased self-esteem, and like decreased stress. That was like one of the biggest things that I've seen. And that was a really interesting piece too, because I think one of the things that we always try to look for is what's something that I can tangibly take away from this, because sometimes I just need to see it, kind of a thing. And then of course there's like this collective mental health, how does kindness affect us as a society? And a few months ago I talked about civility, and when I was putting this together, it really reminded me, as I was reading some of this research and some of the perceptions and stories about kindness, that this general notion of civility was present, that people are taking care of themselves, they're doing for other people, while at the same time they're being mindful of their own needs. And that's really like, the bottom line definition of kindness. Is that in one podcast that I'd really admire was the doctor that was talking about the research that she has that she was referring to, had mentioned that when you're doing acts of kindness, you're being altruistic, yet at the same time you're not doing it to the disadvantage of yourself. And I thought that was a really great point, because you're not putting yourself out per se by doing something kind for someone else. And in general, when we look at what kindness does, is that there does tend to be this sort of ripple effect that occurs, that when kindness is done, there's this kind of sense of wanting to pay it forward, or giving it back to somebody else, kind of a thing. And I remember, I mean, I don't know if any of you here have had this experience, but I remember, two incidences in particular had come to mind as I was putting this together. There was one time, I'm a big Dunkin' Donut coffee fan, and so I go every time before work and I get a coffee for work. And one time I went, and I actually had got treats for a work meeting. And it was like during the day or something. And so I had gone to the window to pay for the coffee and for the donuts, and the woman had told me that it was already paid for. And I was completely taken aback by that, because at first I felt guilty because I was like, wow, that was a lot of money. And I feel kind of bad that this person, paid this money for, for coffee and donuts. And then it really was just like this most incredible feeling of this random person just doing this incredible act of kindness and not even knowing who I was, and just, paid for this, not even knowing how much it was going to be, just paid for, the person behind them. And so it really kind of stayed with me for, a really long period of time. And, I ended up paying that forward to other people, because every time that I went to that same location for probably about a few, well, at least a week, I was always reminded of that person who was kind to me, and I would also pay it forward to somebody else. So it really just kind of created that ripple effect. And then, the other one that came into mind, and it was completely like I was not, it was just not even thinking about it. I just remember going into a
You going to
local
sleep? Yep, I'm gonna go to bed.
local convenience store, and I went in there, and there was this woman who was in a motorized wheelchair, and this store that I was in is quite small, so you can't really navigate anything between the aisles and stuff. And so she was asking one of the store workers about the location of some items and whatnot. And, the store worker was really busy because there was a lot of people in there, and it didn't seem like there were other people there. And she was like, well, is there any way that you can, show me what that looks like or whatever? And I said, well, let me know what is it that you're looking for? I can just grab it, because I'm going to be going in that direction anyways. And just without thinking, I was going to be there. So it wasn't like, it wasn't like out of my way. And so I think both of them were surprised. I don't really know, but they just both kind of looked at me for a moment, and I just said, well, I'm going in that direction. I can just, see what's there, or bring back what you need or whatever. And so anyways, and so I brought back, what I found, and it wasn't an item that she wanted. So I put it back, and I, brought another item, and that was not an item that she wanted. So it wasn't a big deal. I put it back. I, went and got my things, and I was going up to the register to pay, and all of a sudden she's like right next to me, and she's like, okay, I'm going to pay for your items. And I was like, what? And she had said, well, you were very kind to me. And she goes, I would like to do that in return. And I said, well, I, was not, I don't, it's not, I didn't even know how to respond to it, to be honest with you. I was like completely taken aback, because I had quite a few items, and this is not this is not an inexpensive place. And so I was like, I didn't, and she was like, I insist on paying for this, because, I would like to do something kind too. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to argue with you. And I said, I really appreciate that. And just know it's unnecessary. And yet at the same time, I really appreciate it. So she paid for my items, and, she was there for a conference, and was looking for some items to take to the conference, to have while she was in this day-long thing. And so, it was just again, it was just an example of, not even really thinking about how that was going to affect her, but she was really taken aback by that. And she had expressed that to me, and we ended up talking for a few minutes about, her story. And she told me her story, and how, it's really hard for her to get help sometimes because of being in a motorized wheelchair, and how people don't usually offer to help. Which, I mean, I'm not like trying to be egotistical here or anything. It's just an example of kindness. And without even thinking, because I was already back there, it didn't even strike me as being like out of the ordinary. It was just kind of like well, I'm already in that direction, and the store person was busy, so it just kind of made sense. And everyone else kind of seemed, you know, like in their own world, and I was standing right there. So anyways, the whole point was just to demonstrate that there was this kind of ripple effect. And I did notice that the store person was kinder too. They just seemed to have a little bit less stress when we were checking out because they were laughing a little bit more. And it was just a nice moment to have. And so, you know, it was nice to have some, you know, just a moment to reflect and to have some less tension and stress. And, you know, one of the things that I saw in some of the content is that, you know, when we do pay it forward, or when we do random acts of kindness for other people, what struck me was this notion of other people feeling like they're being seen and heard, and, you know, knowing that other people see their presence, which was an interesting thing to me because I don't know how often that's spoken of, you know, that by doing a kind act, it is it is a way of basically validating another person's existence because we're doing something for them. And it's not necessarily, you know, it's just acknowledging that they're there. And we don't often do that. And so I found that to be a really interesting benefit, and something that, you know, especially in today's society, that's one of the things that I think, you know, that we struggle with, is that a lot of people do not feel like they're being seen or heard or acknowledged or recognized or understood, or, you know, that the experience is minimized or whatnot. So it was just a very interesting benefit to mention. And then, you know, this other piece about perception came up too, is that there is this difference of perception in kindness. And, you know, a lot of times we kind of think about how, you know, we're doing something nice for somebody and, you know, we're going to feel good about that. And what some of the research came, what I read in some of the research was that oftentimes the receiver, excuse me, gets more benefit out of that act of kindness than we do in the act of giving it. And so some of the differences that they pointed out is that, you know, while we may be giving like something more tangible or monetary in kind, the receiver may perceive it as more of like a thought or a sense of connection or something more of value than we tangibly can understand. And I thought that was an interesting point, because we often don't know how people perceive things that we may give, or how we are doing acts of kindness. And so it's interesting how perceptions can be different. And I've talked about perceptions before too, and it's just something to be aware of, that, you know, we don't always know how people are going to perceive what we're doing. And sometimes we don't even know how they're going to perceive. Like, we may think it's not going to have that much of a value, but it has more value than we think that it does. And so the third part of it is this witnessing perception. And some of you may have had this experience where you see an act of kindness being done, and it connects you. You know, you feel something just by observing that. And that's this kind of different perception too, that collectively also occurs, that as kindness is occurring, when we see somebody doing something nice or generous or altruistic or compassionate for somebody else, or, you know, an animal or in a situation or whatever that may look like, you know, that we also experience some sort of benefit from that. And we're not even involved in it. We're just like observing it. And yet there's this kind of ripple, you know, energetic effect that occurs. And so it was interesting because, you know, I was very curious about that. Like, how does that happen? Because how is it that just watching something like that gives us that same kind of feeling? You know, if you're watching something on television, you hear a story even, you know, and you get that kind of warmth feeling, so to speak, is what it was called, like a warmth feeling. And so, or you may have an emotional reaction when you hear about these stories. And those are the kind of things that, you know, what the research and the resources, you know, that I've listed at the end will all, you know, you can read them at length, but I've kind of extracted, you know, these pieces from there. But what they basically had said, and this kind of goes to, you know, I'm really big about, you need something really concrete and evidence-based to give you like that. Well, I need something that I could see and I can prove, right, that this is going on. So you both extreme. I mean, that's the pendulum, right? Is like you've got this side of it that's the concrete, and you got this side that's like this, you know, kind of abstract. Like kindness is, you know, how do you make it tangible? So it's this sort of like, what are the benefits of kindness? These are the benefits in a more concrete way that you can visibly prove, and you can see results of it. And there have been studies that have been done on this. They've done a lot of different research, you know, in positive psychology. They've done this. They've done this in terms of looking at physical health. They've done this in terms of looking at the different neurotransmitters that are released in the brain. They've also done it in relation to stress. And, you know, stress is a huge thing. And a lot of us experience a lot of that nowadays. And especially, you know, the pandemic, there's still a lot of residual stress that has occurred and stayed as a result of that. And so what one of the articles talked about was how, you know, these acts of kindness that we engage in actually helps to decrease cortisol in our bodies. And cortisol is responsible for a lot of our physical, you know, so cortisol is a chemical in the body that is present 24/7. So you need a small amounts of it because it does help keep the body regulated. But in large amounts, what happens, and this is what happens when the stress response occurs. So whenever we feel, you know, the flight response, right? So whenever that's elicited, that is when cortisol levels will elevate. And so when cortisol levels are present, more increased levels, and they don't dissipate, they don't disappear, or they don't get stopped, you know, by the brain. The flight response is continuously, you know, on, so to speak. That's what's responsible to some degree, you know, for a lot of the complications that we have. I read that it's responsible for a lot of the belly fat that we experience as human beings, you know, it can be responsible for part of the aging process, and a lot of different other things. One study I remember a while back, and some of the other research I did with stress, is that it actually does contribute to decreasing the protective factors that slow the aging process. And so the idea with it is that, you know, by engaging in an act of kindness, you essentially allow the cortisol to be decreased and increase the hormones and chemicals in the brain that allow for some of the positive stuff to happen. You know, oxytocin is responsible for our bonding. That's our kind of like social connection neurotransmitter. So if you think about like, this is one of the reasons, this is one of the main differences with, you know, and this is a very generalized statement, keep in mind, but oxytocin is usually released, you'll see more of it in social bonding. And so when people are having bonding moments, people will notice that there is more of this presence. There's been studies done on this. You know, endorphins are that feel-good chemical. Serotonin is a feel-good chemical. It also has helped with sleep. And so the idea with this is that we have an increase in these by being kind. And then physical health in general. So what some of the articles talked about, and what I've known just from research with stress, is that, you know, aches and pains go down, people sleep better, things of that nature. So those are like the tangible results. You know, with the physical body, there are these changes that we can actually see and that we can prove are happening as a result of these other kinds of differences that we're making in our life. And then the non-tangible benefits, the things that we can't really pinpoint, but that we experience, is the connection that people may feel with each other, and, kind of talking about with the oxytocin. And then the bigger picture, there's like this kind of, being connected tends to have this kind of bigger picture feeling. And then there's this, value and the principles that people may engage with, and kind of looking at, the synonyms that exist with that. And the impact that it makes on people, just knowing that you might have contributed to someone having a better day. And then more of a long-term satisfaction that people experience, which can't really be measured, but yet you experience it. And yet it can be measured at the same time, but it's one of those things that it's not really tangible per se, yet it's experienced. And so those are kind of like the different tangible, non-tangible differences. And so, kind of just some foundational suggestions with this that I found is, one of the things they mentioned is that, kindness is one of those practices that is cultivated. You don't just do it once and then all of a sudden you have these great benefits. It is like, it is something that is done over a period of time. And so it is looking for different opportunities. I really liked how this one podcast transcript listed that. I like that. I love the word opportunities. And so really looking for different opportunities where you can do that. And so one of the things that came to mind is maybe you create like a kindness fishbowl where you put like a bunch of random kindness things in a fishbowl. And then whenever you want to do something kind, or even if you don't want to do something kind, but that's probably something to try, you just pull something out and then that's what you do. So it kind of gives you that opportunity to engage in it. And then, the ego versus kindness, I thought was something important just to kind of explore in terms of recognizing that there is a difference between the ego itself and what is, more for us only, and we're doing it to manipulate, or are we really doing it to help another person? And I know we only have a couple minutes left, so really quickly, I just wanted to go over it with the others. This could be very like, just a random smile that we give somebody, random acts of kindness, holding the door, other kind of gestures that we may do. It might be mailing a card, or I'm sorry, I missed the self, but mailing a card to someone, paying it forward, being of service. And then with the self, the compassion, giving ourselves compliments, keeping little notes of encouragement, those kinds of things. And then this is the resources that I was talking about. I just want to put that up there, and I wanted to give people an opportunity. If you had any comments before we end, I'm sorry I went through the end really fast because I didn't realize we only had a couple minutes left. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope you got something out of it. But if anybody has any comments that they want to share, or
It was a great session, especially it was World Kindness Day today, so it coincided perfectly.
yes, yeah, I thought it would be a good idea to just remind ourselves of that. So
I just very quickly, I have to say, and I thought of this several minutes ago as you were talking, but one of the simplest random acts of kindness that I seem to get benefit from often, and I try to give it also, is just, for example, in the grocery store, smiling at somebody you're passing by. And I notice that is reciprocated 100% of the time.
yeah,
And when it happens to me, I hope I reciprocate 100% of the time too. But that's a very simple one, but it is profound.
it very much is, and I appreciate you sharing that too. Yeah, and not taking it with any, like malicious intent. A smile is a smile. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Cheryl.
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And in 2 weeks, it's actually going to be right around Thanksgiving. So, Pramila, if it's okay with you, I think we will move it to December 11th as the next
Sure,
one.
sure. We can do that. Yeah.
Okay, so that way it'll give everyone a chance to enjoy their holiday break, however you celebrate that. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the new month.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
everyone.
evening, everyone. Bye.
Rena,
Bye, thanks.
bye-bye.